Well, hi. It's been a week since I have been out of the hospital with emergency surgery, and I have to return my laptop because I work at a remote job and they just sent me a new one. So how about we take a ride to FedEx and I'll tell you all about the excitement that was the last 10 days. Where to begin? So, by the way, I'm Katie. I'm in my 50th year, not 50 years old, in my 50th year, very important. I have 5 months left in this year, and I've made it my purpose to just record what's going on. I live a boring life, but that seems to be like a thing people want to see. So, okay. Happy to record my boredom. So let's talk about how I managed to get myself in the hospital last week. So last Sunday, it was the evening. I typically have Sunday scaries, not because of anybody's fault at this particular job. Trauma from other jobs. You'd think that Sunday scaries would be a thing that doesn't happen, all that much. It does. It totally does. What? My check engine light just came on. That's a whole other thing. So we're going to go to the Brecksville one because we'll stop at the... Why? All right. Anyway, so I was saying about the hospital. So it was last Sunday, 1 week ago, almost exactly. I was getting ready to wind down in the evening. I had eaten supper at 6 p.m., had my usual chronic heartburn, which is a real bummer. But I've been having that for quite a while, that is not a new thing. Sunday, had a usual day. It's about 9:30. I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and everything is fine and normal. But I'm noticing that I have a severe pain growing kind of in my stomach. It's definitely radiating from the front to the back. So it's like right smack in the middle of my chest, and it's radiating behind my shoulder blades. This is all normal at this point. I've had this for years. Sometimes it's worse than others. I didn't eat anything particularly different or unusual, but this is growing. Took a Pepsid, that didn't touch it. Driving. I took an Advil, things were still not good. In fact, things were getting progressively worse really quickly, more so than usual. That was unusual. So kind of set myself to just wait it out because there's really nothing you can do at that point. There's nothing that I could do that was touching it. What scared me a little bit is when I took a Tylenol, it actually got much worse. I had this dread in my belly. I just knew that this was not going to be something I could sleep off. And 6 weeks ago, I had one of these kind of attacks before, and boy, it was bad. It was severe, but I didn't do anything about it at that point. It got to be midnight. Things were getting worse. I had given it 3 hours, and we all agreed. I live with my parents, which is nice because they had a chance to weigh in. I mean, I kept thinking if I had been by myself, this would have been very bad. So had a chance to confer with them, and my mom was like, yeah, you should go because this is not going to get better. It's only gotten worse. You're not going to wait it out. I got my coat on. She had to wake my dad up. I was going to take myself, and she was like, you're not taking yourself. What are you, nuts? My dad got out of bed, put on the clothes, grabbed a book, and we headed to Marymount Hospital ER, which is our family hospital of choice. Marymount is where I was born, that many years ago. It was my first time being a patient at Marymount. I have been to ERs in the past. They were all in Illinois. On the way there, I started feeling very much like I was going to throw up. Now, this was the first time I had not had even remotely that feeling. In fact, at one point in the evening, I was like, yeah, but I don't have that feeling where I'm going to throw up or something. No, I totally got that little, and it's such an unusual feeling. It's not the typical, like, I've eaten something terrible and I'm going to throw it up. It is like a very unique little tickle, real deep in the stomach. I managed to hold it till we got to the ER, checked in behind a guy who said he had chest pains and had a hard time breathing. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to be the first one in. Sat in the ER for about 15 minutes. I was really actually bummed out because there were so many people in the waiting room of the ER. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to take forever. No, it didn't, thankfully. And I didn't have to throw up while I was in the waiting room. So after about 15 minutes, I started a timer actually because I was very curious to see how long this whole thing was going to take. After about 15 minutes, I got called into the triage nurse's office. This was the best timed barfing I've ever done because as they're doing my intake and they're starting to like hook up the little nodes that do like a test of your heart rate away, because I think my heart rate was extremely high. This was so painful. They asked me on the pain scale what I was at. It was an 8. And I'm not a wuss, but I'm also not a hero when it comes to pain. Like, this was bad. I was literally holding my breath because it hurt to breathe. So not like from a lung perspective, from like an abdomen perspective. So I threw up in the nurse's trash can, and immediately she was like, well, we can't send you back to the waiting room to throw up out there, so we're going to have to get you a room. Thank God. So they walked me back to a room. They ordered a whole bunch of tests, and I got my first round of definitely morphine and an anti-nausea medicine, which I highly appreciated because at this point I was straight up vomiting. Like, no stopping, no conferring with anybody else. I was absolutely throwing up, unapologetically throwing up. So I was very thankful for that. My dad decided to stay with me as long as he could. He's like, I'll stay with you until we find out what's going on, and then, I'll take my leave. I went, they drew blood, they put an IV in for those medications, and that was kind of that. So I did that. I saw the doctor a couple times in the ER, and they sent me for a CAT scan because the ER doc said it's either pancreatitis or gallbladder. So we're going to send you for a CAT scan. It's not ideal because CAT scan doesn't show soft tissue. And so, we're going to just have to make do with that because it was Sunday at basically 3:30 in the morning. He's like, we don't have an ultrasound tech on duty at this time. We just kind of hunkered down to wait. Thankfully, they gave me morphine for the pain. I knew this was bad because it was really not touching the pain. And I was like, wow. But at least it took the edge off enough that I was able to kind of sleep a little bit, and that helped to pass the time. At about 4:30, a nurse came in and I had asked for more pain medicine. She's like, yeah, I'll definitely order that. She logged into the, my chart. And she was like, oh, you're being admitted. I had heard nothing of this. She's like, do you know this? I was like, nope, first I'm hearing of that. And my heart really sank because I was just hoping that this was going to be like a regular deal. No, she's like, the doctor's going to come in a minute. He'll explain everything. But they talked to gastroenterology, maybe. And she's like, yeah, you're being admitted, so something's happening. So finally, the ER doc came in at about maybe 5 o'clock in the morning and was like, yeah, you're going to have surgery to remove your gallbladder because we can't see any stones, but the wall is thickening. It doesn't look right. All the tests are coming back suggesting that this is the right course of action. So that is what happened. And at about 6, so my dad left, took the important stuff with him, the non-important stuff, like my jacket, whatever. And I was there in the ER until about 6:30. And they had done, maybe it was later, I don't know. I think maybe at 6:30, I went for a ultrasound, I think, and that confirmed everything. So that was the end of the ER stay. I ended up going upstairs and getting into a room at about 8 o'clock, and they were getting me ready for surgery. I am now at FedEx, so I'm going to take this laptop, do what I have to do with this thing, and I'll come back and tell you the next part of the story as we make our way to the mechanic to find out why my check engine light is on, because that's super annoying. And that we're gonna go to Starbucks, because here's the thing. I can't handle emotionally the fact that my check engine light is on. I'm so ticked. I just took care of this like a little while ago. It didn't seem so, it should not be doing this. It makes me furious. I think I want a matcha something. What's going on with Uber these days? I feel like that's everywhere. Why is that a thing? Stop it. I'm not against Uber, but like, why we need to have, I gotta get the iced banana bread matcha again. That is so good. Okay. So as it goes, okay, so we pick up the story. I'm now on the second floor. I'm admitted. I'm feeling still in a lot of pain, but also now a little groggy because I have the morphine. No complaints. The pain was much more manageable. A man comes in. He's talking to me about the surgery. I'm thinking at some point he introduced himself, but I don't remember that. It was the surgeon, so awesome. And he's like, yeah, let's go. And the nurse couldn't have been nicer. She was so nice. But she was like, yeah, they need you up in surgery in like an hour, and we've got a lot to do. So there was another blood draw. I got my official hospital gown. They took all my clothes. They took my glasses, which, by the way, thank God I hadn't been wearing contact lenses. But they took my glasses, and she was like, you're in it now. And the next thing I remember is transport coming to get me, and they're taking me over to the surgery center, which is on the same floor, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I remember saying to the nurse, she's like, oh, we need a urine sample from you. I'm like, I don't know where anything is. Like, they did that. And one of the last things I remember is her saying, okay, we're going to put the surgery cap on you. And they were moving so fast. And I'm not sure exactly why, but this felt like we're going. And I don't know if that was because of my situation or because of the schedule. I have no idea, but they were moving real quick. Dr. Dan, the anesthesiologist, came in, asked me a whole bunch of questions. I've never been under general anesthesia before. And so he was like telling me what I could expect and whatever. And the whole time I just felt like, whoa, I really had to put my thinking brain on, because I was not going to like remember any of this if I didn't super pay attention. Remember telling myself, like, listen to this now. Answer the questions that they are asking. It was crazy. It was an example of like definitely needing to really focus and do it in a way that I'm telling myself, like, pay attention. You have to pay attention. They put the little surgery cap on me. They're like, the next thing you're gonna see is the table. We need you to help us move you onto the table. Can you do that? I was like, yes. They centered me in there. And literally the last thing I remember, he's like, you're going to hear me count down from 10. The mask is going to come on your face. You'll hear the countdown, and that's the last thing you'll remember. No. I didn't even, the last thing I remember is the mask hovering over my face as it was coming toward me. That was it. And surgery begun. So the next thing I know, I'm waking up in the surgery center. The surgery's complete. Everything's gone well. I'm still alive, thank God. I have this kind of like maybe irrational fear of going under anesthesia, but everything was such a whirlwind before that surgery that I almost am thankful for it, because I couldn't have neuroses about it. Like, there was no doubt this was happening, and I had no choice, and it was out of my hands. Everything was out of my hands. And now that I'm thinking about it, what is funny, I realize it's similar to travel. When things are kind of totally out of my control and I recognize that, thrive in that scenario. Like, I don't have any trouble giving up complete control. Once it is clear that that is what must happen, like that's the key to everything. When I see that that is what must happen, then I'm fine giving it up. It's, I think, kind of the being in the middle of like, should I give up control? Should I step in? That's where I get hung up sometimes. After that, they wheeled me back to my room. I got so lucky, I feel like, because I didn't have to share a room. It was quiet, and I had survived, and all was well with the world. I wasn't in the same kind of pain. I had kind of a new kind of pain, but it was completely bearable. At that point, it was like, oh my God, the ordeal is over. It wasn't totally over. I was still in the hospital. Terrible pain was completely gone. And I felt this weird sense of like, you are cared for, so just relax. I'll pick up the story there. Mushroom bites. Mushroom bites. I don't know if you can tell, but it has gotten so bright out here. Like, it is definitely summertime. All right. On to the mechanic to see if I can hop in and understand what is going on with this car, which is super annoying. But first, an egg bite. The mushroom truffle ones. Ooh, I've decided I'm going to call the mechanic first. Nothing makes me more annoyed. God, I hate it. Just everything work. This car, I love this car. I love it. It's my first car that I've ever felt really like bonded with. But over the past couple years, it has come in for all kinds of stupid stuff. I think because it's just getting old, and there's not enough mileage on it to switch it out. The fourth time I've dealt with this check engine light in the past like year. It's crazy. Last time it was an O2 sensor. And I'm pretty sure that's what this is, but it's just super annoying. Like, come on, get it together. All right, so back to the hospital story. So I'm in the bed after surgery, just feeling so happy that all the pain from the emergency room is like no longer there. Oh my. The next 12 hours were pretty much a standard hospital experience. They put my IV in my left arm because I'm right-handed. Thank God. Hang on, I need to take a swig of something because I'm dry. Oh, I should also mention, it was so boss, but the nurses let me keep my door closed. Amazing. All that typical story that you get about like things being really loud, and didn't really have to worry about that. With the door closed, man, it was awesome. I watched about 12 hours worth of YouTube videos, so the algorithm was fed. And it was very, very uneventful. I remember moving was really hard. So the gallbladder is like on the upper, for me, it's the upper right side, right? It feels like right under my rib cage on the right side. And so any twisting, turning, any kind of moving, any kind of breathing, very uncomfortable. In the ER, it was horrendously painful. After surgery, it was sore. So even getting up to go to the bathroom was a task. As I moved around a little bit more, things got a little easier, less sore. I think your body just like needs a minute to reorient itself after something like that. Yeah, so the next morning, early, the doctors came in doing their rounds. Dr. Noah and the surgery fellow, can't remember his name, they were awesome. Kind of gave me the story, and everything was looking really good. I was feeling really good. In fact, at that point, I had moved to only Tylenol for pain, which really shocked me. I thought it was going to be much more painful in the recovery, and it really wasn't. Tylenol every 4 hours was basically what I was doing. I was thrilled with that. And at that point, they also told me, and I couldn't have been happier, that I could eat a regular diet, because I think in the ER they put me on clear liquids only, so it was like soup and jello, which was fine. To be honest, I wasn't that hungry, and I had a little bit of PTSD from all of the pain in that kind of digestive region, you know, and so I wasn't really so interested in eating anything at that point. But by the morning when I saw the doctors, I was interested. I definitely wanted to get some food. So I ordered up a lovely breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast. And I even got to have some coffee, which was also being somewhat of a problem because I was starting to have terrible caffeine withdrawal headache. Came in right under the wire on that one. It was great. So I was glad for that. And the surgeon, so the guy who did the surgery was not there, but his surgical partner, his partner in the practice or whatever, came in to kind of assess things. And he was like, yeah, this is looking really good. You're looking really good. So he's like, as long as you tolerate this food that you just ate, and everything looks good, we're ready to send you home. Music to my ears, because I don't know how people stay in the hospital for weeks and weeks. That's got to be completely a bummer, a depressing bummer, frankly. So had my breakfast, tolerated it well, and I was out of there, baby. The funniest thing was everything from the ER, which I expected to be such a slog. But when you're in the ER, this has been my experience of the ER in general. When you're in there, something is very, very wrong, and it's distracting you from the time, either in a good way or a bad way. This time, the ER stay did not feel crazy long to me, even though it was ultimately like 6 hours. But I was able to sleep. I was getting pain medication, and I had my room, and that was clutch. That was completely key. I just kept thinking like, oh my God, thank God you threw up when you did, because if I had to sit in the waiting room, that would have been horrendous. But there's something about that fight and flight response that works in your favor in those scenarios, and so there was that. But everything up to and around the surgery, and even afterward, everything was moving. The thing that took the longest was getting the transporter to come and pick me up to take me to the front door. I was like, guys, and I've worked in the hospital before, so I know they don't let you walk yourself out. It's a liability. In fact, I used to work for transport, and people would complain all the time that it took so long for me to get there. And I'm like, dude, I just got this call 10 minutes ago. I totally got direction to leave. They, put all the discharge stuff through. I got my little tote bag and my packet of information and stuff like that. The nurse called twice for transport. Everything up to that point was so smooth. Transport took very nearly 2 hours. First of all, what's so annoying about that is they don't call transport until your ride is there. I don't know why, because transport's gonna be the thing that hangs you up. But it all kind of worked out okay, because as I was waiting for transport, there was another person that came into the room. So we were like almost ships in the night. Like, I think we shared about a half an hour in there. They were totally fine. Speaking and listening to, I think, a mass in Polish, which was awesome because they weren't talking to me. And they were not disruptive or, anything in any way. So didn't mind that. I was basically done. I was dressed and ready to go. Got a second visit from Dr. Noah. Shout out to Dr. Noah, friend from the hospital. 2:30 on Monday, which, by the way, talk about alignment. It's a 1:30, so almost exactly Monday today. It's almost exactly 7 days since I was there. They wheeled me out to the front door. My dad had been waiting there for roughly an hour, and I was on my way. Okay, so I intended this story to be one video, but I yammered on for, I don't even know how long. So I didn't really do an outro for this because I had a whole nother section, which will maybe be another video, kind of putting a final cap on this whole story and what I learned really ultimately. So I'm going to end this right here. I don't believe anybody is still watching, but if you are still watching, thank you for sticking around this long. I wanted to share mostly the symptoms and kind of the process because I was very terrified, and I'm usually not a terrified person. And this whole ordeal was eye-opening, but more so than anything, it kind of showed me that there's really very little to fear in terms of going into the hospital, staying there, having a big procedure done. It's just a part of life. And I just so happened to be lucky enough that this was in my 50th year that my many firsts on that front happened. So thanks for watching. Stick around for a couple other installments of this story where I talk about things that I learned and maybe things to watch for. See you in the next one.